In this episode, Lucy finds herself once again caught between her desire to prove her independence and her uncanny ability to turn even the simplest situation into complete chaos, as the story begins with her settling into what she believes will be a calm and productive day, determined to show everyone around her, especially Mr. Mooney, that she is more than capable of handling responsibility without supervision. But of course, things immediately start to spiral the moment she overhears a conversation suggesting that she might not be as reliable as she thinks, which sparks a fire in her competitive spirit and pushes her to take on a task far bigger than she can realistically manage, leading her to volunteer for something that initially seems straightforward but quickly reveals itself to be layered with complications, misunderstandings, and opportunities for comedic disaster. And as Lucy dives headfirst into this commitment, she begins with an overconfident attitude, brushing aside any advice or warnings from her friends who have seen her track record and know exactly how this will probably end. But Lucy insists on doing things her own way, convinced that this time will be different. And at first, it even appears that she might succeed as she organizes everything with surprising efficiency, moving around with determination and giving instructions like someone who actually knows what they're doing, which momentarily shocks those around her. But this fragile illusion of competence doesn't last long because Lucy's tendency to overcomplicate things kicks in. And instead of sticking to the plan, she starts adding unnecessary improvements, adjustments, and shortcuts that she believes will make everything better, but in reality only introduce new variables that she cannot control. And soon small problems begin to appear, a misplaced item here, a miscommunication there, each one minor on its own, but collectively building towards something much bigger. And Lucy, instead of addressing these issues logically, tries to cover them up or fix them in increasingly creative and ill-advised ways, which only makes the situation worse. And the tension slowly builds as the audience can clearly see that everything is heading toward a breaking point, while Lucy remains stubbornly optimistic, convinced she can still pull it off. And as the episode progresses, the stakes rise when an important figure becomes involved. Someone whose opinion matters greatly and whose presence adds pressure to Lucy's already unstable situation, forcing her to double down on her efforts and attempt even more elaborate solutions, leading to a series of comedic sequences where her plans unravel in real time, props malfunction, timing goes wrong, and Lucy is forced to improvise on the spot, often making things more absurd with each attempt to fix them. And throughout all of this, there is a constant push and pull between Lucy's confidence and reality, as she swings between moments of near success and complete failure, creating a rhythm of tension and release that keeps the story engaging. And her interactions with the other characters add another layer of humor as they react to her antics with a mix of frustration, disbelief, and reluctant support, sometimes trying to intervene and help, other times stepping back to watch the inevitable chaos unfold. And Lucy's refusal to admit she's in over her head becomes a central theme, highlighting both her determination and her comedic flaw of never knowing when to stop. And eventually, everything reaches a climax when all the small problems she has been trying to manage at once collide in a single, spectacular sequence of events where timing, misunderstandings, and physical comedy all come together, resulting in a scene that is both hilarious and completely out of control, as Lucy desperately tries to maintain the illusion that everything is fine while everything around her clearly falls apart. And the more she tries to fix things, the worse it gets, until it becomes impossible to hide the truth any longer, leading to the inevitable moment where her efforts are exposed and she has to face the consequences of her actions. And in that moment, there is a mix of embarrassment and humor, as Lucy realizes that her attempt to prove herself has backfired in the most dramatic way possible. Yet even then, she doesn't completely lose her spirit, instead finding a way to laugh at the situation and move forward. And the resolution brings a sense of closure as the other characters react to the outcome, some shaking their heads, others offering a bit of sympathy, but all acknowledging that this is just part of who Lucy is. Someone who means well, but inevitably creates chaos wherever she goes, and by the end of the episode, things settle back into a kind of normalcy, with Lucy perhaps learning a small lesson, though not enough to stop her from repeating similar mistakes in the future. And the story closes on a lighthearted note, reinforcing the idea that while Lucy may never change completely, her energy, determination, and ability to turn everyday situations into unforgettable adventures are exactly what make her such a compelling and entertaining character, leaving the audience amused and already anticipating what kind of trouble she will get into next. And as the final moments play out, there is a sense that despite all the mishaps and misunderstandings, Lucy's world remains intact. Her relationships are unchanged, and life goes on, ready for another round of comedic misadventures that will undoubtedly follow the same pattern of ambition, chaos, and eventual resolution, making this episode a perfect example of the show's formula, where the journey is far more entertaining than the destination, and Lucy's unique blend of confidence and clumsiness continues to drive the humor forward in a way that feels both familiar and endlessly entertaining, stretching each situation just far enough to maximize the comedy without losing the heart of the story. And even though everything seems exaggerated and over the top, there is still a relatable core in Lucy's desire to prove herself and be taken seriously, which adds a layer of sincerity beneath all the chaos, making the episode not just funny, but also engaging on a character level, as viewers can see a bit of themselves in Lucy's struggles, even if they would never take things quite as far as she does. And that balance between humor and relatability is what keeps the episode feeling fresh and enjoyable from start to finish, even as it leans heavily into its comedic elements, ensuring that by the time the story wraps up, the audience has been taken on a wild ride that feels both satisfying and memorable, and Lucy, as always, remains at the center of it all, a whirlwind of energy and unpredictability that guarantees no situation will ever stay simple for long. And just when it seems like the situation couldn't possibly stretch any further, the episode continues to pile on even more layers of absurdity as Lucy, played by Lucille Ball, refuses to let the aftermath of her earlier disaster define the rest of her day and instead convinces herself that she can still salvage her reputation if she just pulls off one final impressive move, which leads her into yet another scheme that starts off sounding reasonable in her head but immediately raises red flags for everyone else. Yet no one can stop her because Lucy operates on a kind of unstoppable momentum where logic takes a back seat to determination. And as she sets this new plan into motion, the audience can already sense that history is about to repeat itself. Only this time with even higher stakes because she is now trying to fix a situation that was already broken by her previous actions, creating a chain reaction of complications that feeds into itself, and the humor escalates as Lucy begins juggling multiple problems at once, running back and forth, trying to keep track of details that are slipping through her fingers faster than she can catch them. And each attempt to regain control only adds another layer of confusion, whether it's mistaking one thing for another, giving the wrong instructions at the worst possible moment, or physically getting herself stuck in situations that require increasingly ridiculous solutions to escape from. And the pacing of the episode becomes almost frantic in the best way, with events overlapping and characters crossing paths in ways that amplify the chaos, all while Lucy maintains this stubborn belief that she is just one step away from turning everything around, which makes every failure hit even harder and funnier because of how avoidable it all seems from the outside, and the supporting characters, who have now fully accepted that they are caught in Lucy's whirlwind, start reacting in more exaggerated ways themselves, either trying to stay out of her path or reluctantly getting pulled into her schemes, adding to the overall sense that the entire world of the Lucy show bends around her unpredictable energy. And as everything builds toward yet another peak, Lucy finds herself in a situation where she has to think on her feet more than ever before, improvising solutions that become increasingly creative and completely detached from practicality, leading to a sequence that feels like a perfect storm of comedic timing, physical mishaps, and escalating misunderstandings, where every second counts and every move she makes has unintended consequences that ripple outward, affecting everyone involved. And despite all of this, there's something almost admirable about her refusal to give up. Because even as everything crumbles, she keeps pushing forward with the same confidence she had at the beginning, creating this strange mix of frustration and admiration that defines her character so well, and eventually the chaos reaches its absolute limit, tipping over into a moment where everything that could go wrong has gone wrong, and Lucy is left standing in the middle of the aftermath, surrounded by the evidence of her overambition, forced once again to confront the gap between what she intended to do and what actually happened. And while this realization brings a brief moment of humility, it doesn't last long because Lucy quickly shifts her perspective, choosing to see the humor in the situation rather than dwell on the failure, which allows the episode to end on a lighter note, with the tension dissolving into laughter and the characters settling back into their usual dynamic. As if this entire whirlwind of events was just another day in Lucy's life, and in a way it is. Because what makes her so entertaining is not that she learns and changes drastically from one episode to the next, but that she continues to approach each new situation with the same boldness and lack of caution, guaranteeing that the cycle of ambition, chaos, and comedic fallout will continue, and as the story wraps up, there's a lingering sense that no matter how many times things go wrong, Lucy will always bounce back with the same energy, ready to dive into the next adventure without hesitation, which is exactly why episodes like this remain so engaging, because they don't just rely on a single joke or moment, but build an entire sequence of escalating events that feed off Lucy's personality, creating a kind of controlled chaos that feels both unpredictable and perfectly structured at the same time. And by the final moments, the audience is left with that familiar feeling of having watched everything spiral completely out of control only to somehow land back on its feet, a signature rhythm that defines the show and keeps it endlessly watchable, proving once again that as long as Lucy is at the center of the story, no plan will ever stay simple and no outcome will ever be entirely predictable. And honestly, that's exactly the point.